One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
Now, on September 17th, 1989, you were interviewed by Detective Zoeller in New Jersey.
Yes, I was.
And did you tell Detective Zoeller basically the same four-point story?
Yes.
Played in court of the statement that you gave to Detective Zoeller on September 17th, 1989. Is that right?
Yes.
And where were you when you gave that interview?
At my Aunt Terry's house.
And were you expecting Detective Zoeller to be there?
Yes.
And were you awake when he came to the house?
Yes.
Now, do you remember in the course of that interview with Detective Zoeller telling him, and I'm referring to the prosecution version of the transcript, page 10, telling him that when you and your brother returned to the house on Sunday, August 20th, there was a lot of smoke in the room?
Yes.
Now, in fact, Mr. Menendez, did you know on September 17th that when you and your brother returned from Santa Monica, there was no longer any smoke in the room?
Yes.
Do you have any idea why you told Detective Zoeller that there was smoke in the room?
No.
Now, there was smoke in the room at the end of the shooting, correct?
Rephrase the question.
Was there smoke in the room after the shooting was over?
Yes.
Did you also tell Detective Zoeller, and this refers to page 11, that when you and your brother returned to the house, you could smell smoke in the house?
Yes.
Now, did you know, in fact, that the smoke was gone, so of course you couldn't have smelled it?
Yes.
Did you, in fact, on September 17th, tell Detective Zoeller that you smell the smoke every day? Every day, I remember the smoke.
Yes.
Did you tell him, in describing the smoke, it was just a slow haze? The room was like dark yellow. It was like a full, slick haze.
Yes.
Is that what it looked like to you at the end of the shooting?
Yes.
It did not look like that to you, though, did it, when you came back?
Rephrase the question.
Did it look like that when you came back?
No.
Now, in fact, Mr. Menendez, as of September 17th, had you been seeing and smelling smoke every day, as you told Detective Zoeller?
Yes.
And did you continue to see and smell smoke after September 17th?
For a long time after.
How often?
Many times a day, whenever I would hear a car engine and I would smell the smoke of the fumes. Sometimes when someone was cooking, anytime there was smoke, I smelled it and I thought about it.
Did you also picture what it looked like in the room after the shooting?
Oh yes, every day.
And did it take anything to prompt you to picture that?
No.
Did you go on picturing that even after you were arrested?
Yes.
Did you ever have any difficulty in stopping yourself from picturing that?
Overall.
I wasn't able to stop myself from picturing it. Anything would spark it, anything would remind me, and I would see them in the room, and I couldn't stop it.
Now, did you also on September 17th did you ask this question of Detective Zoeller? This is on page 18. Did you ask him, you ever figure it was someone they knew?
Yes.
And were you were talking there, were you not, about that the people who killed your parents was someone your parents knew?
Yes, because...
Were you therefore suggesting to detectives...
Counsel, let's not lead the witness.
What were you trying to suggest to him?
He kept thinking that it was someone maybe they didn't know, and I was trying to say maybe it was someone they knew.
Do you know why you were doing that?
No, I don't know why. I just was doing it.
Did Detective Zoeller follow up on this question? Did he start to probe you?
No.
Do you recall telling him on page 28 that your life was part of your father's dream?
Yes.
Did you feel your life was part of your father's life?
I thought he lived through us, yes.
And were you therefore telling Detective Zoeller...
Counsel, again, that's not lead the witness.
Were you telling Detective Zoeller a lie there or the truth?
The truth.
Do you know why you were telling him that?
Partly.
Okay.
Partly because there were so many things that I was confused about and so sad about that I was just telling him a lot of things about my life that I felt. I was trying to hide certain things, but certain things just came out.
Do you remember telling him that there was some conflict with your dad in last May or April? He thought that I wasn't opening up in tennis.
Yes.
And why were you telling that to Detective Zoeller?
I'm not sure. It was just about the conflict I had with Dad.
So you were telling him that there was a problem?
Yes.
Did he follow up on that?
Objection leading is objective.
Overruled.
Did
Excuse me?
Detective Zoeller follow up? Did he ask you about what this problem meant or how it affected you?
No.
And did you then tell Detective Zoeller, we wanted to go to college really bad. We were getting away from him, you know. We were trying to stay away and doing other things. Do you remember telling him that?
Yes.
Who was the him you were telling him you were trying to get away from?
Dad.
Did he follow up on that? Did he ask you why were you trying to get away from him?
No.
Do you also recall telling Detective Zoeller, this is page 35, when I was young, I used to love everything. I couldn't break a branch off a tree, a leaf off a tree, or something. I used to love everything. I wouldn't want to hurt anything. And it seems that as one gets older, they have to experience things and life is colder. Remember telling him that?
Yes.
Do you know what you were thinking about when you were telling him that?
In essence,
What were you thinking about?
that I killed my parents.
Did he follow up on that? Did he ask you, what do you mean life is colder? What do you mean you wouldn't have wanted to hurt anything?
No.
Now, while you were in New Jersey, in September, during the trip when Detective Zoeller interviewed you, did you see your family doctor?
Yes.
And was this the same doctor that you had seen during your childhood?
Yes.
And why did you go see him?
Because of the terrible pains that I had in my stomach.
And how long had you been experiencing those pains in your stomach?
About 3 weeks.
Had you experienced pains in your stomach before your parents were killed?
Yes.
And for how long before?
About a week.
And they continued after?
Yes.
Were there other things that you were experiencing after that you had not experienced before?
Well, yes, of course.
What things were you experiencing after your parents died?
Objection irrelevant.
Could be more specific as to
Okay.
subject matter.
Okay. Were there things, emotional things you were experiencing after that contributed to your going to the doctor?
Yes.
And what were those things?
Just flashes of them, flashes of things that my dad used to do to me, and it was confusing, and it would really, just the guilt, the thinking of what kind of a person I was, really tore me apart, and it just made me, it gave me a lot of pain.
Concerning going to see the doctor in New Jersey, did you have certain physical symptoms that led you to go there?
Yes.
Had the pain in your stomach caused you to do or not do anything?
Caused me to go to the doctor.
Okay. Did you lose weight, Mr. Menendez?
I lost a lot of weight.
Okay. Why did you lose weight?
I just didn't feel like eating.
And why didn't you feel like eating?
Irrelevant.
Overall.
Because of how I felt and how just how miserable I was.
So it was not just because of the pain in your stomach you didn't eat, it was also because of your mental state?
The pain in the stomach didn't have anything to do with not eating. It all had to do with the same thing, that I had killed my parents, and of how I felt about it. And so I lost weight, and I had this horrible pain in my stomach.
Were you feeling sorry for yourself at this time?
Partly.
Were you feeling sorry for anything else?
Yeah, I was feeling very bad about killing my parents.
After your parents died, did your relatives come in to California from out of town?
Yes.
Did they talk about your parents?
Yes.
How did they make them sound?
They made them sound as if they were these incredible people, and these people that they were in awe of, and these powerful and wonderful people.
Good people.
Yes.
And after being around your relatives, did you start thinking about whether they were good or you were good or both?
Yes.
What did you start thinking?
I was so confused. I mean, I had thought that they weren't these people that they were describing, and if these were such wonderful people, then I just thought it made me a really bad person, really, really bad person.
And is that what you thought of yourself?
Yes.
And did you start having a certain type of dream after your parents died and after you had been around your relatives?
Objection, Your Honor, immediate approach.
Yes.
Mr. Menendez, before your parents died, had you received any information from your father concerning whether or not you were in his will?
Yes.
And when had you received the information from your father?
Almost the year before.
Do you recall what month it was that you received the information?
In September.
Of what year?
September 1988.
And in September of 1988, what information did you receive from your father?
He told me that I was out of the will. He told me that both of us were out of the will, but he told me that I was out too.
And did you believe him?
Yes, he was serious.
Now, in May of 1989, did you have a discussion with your mother about being disowned by your father?
Yes.
Now, in your mind, Mr. Menendez, is there a difference between being disinherited and being disowned?
I'm not sure if there was before then, but certainly then there was a difference because I knew I was already disinherited, so.
You knew you were already disinherited as of when?
As of September.
So the conversation in May with your mother, what does that have to do with?
It had to do with me not reporting to Dad every bit of my tennis matches and my tennis practice when he wasn't around.
And what was it your mother said was the effect of your not reporting to Dad every bit of your tennis?
He was going to disown me.
And what did disown mean to you?
I wasn't sure what it meant, but I knew it meant something very bad because I didn't think he was going to let me leave the house, so I didn't quite know what was going to happen.
Well, ordinarily, what would disown mean to you?
Disown mean kicked out of the house, have nothing to do with you.
Okay. And did you think that was going to happen?
I couldn't imagine that was going to happen. That's what worried me.
Well, why did it worry you?
Well, because if that wasn't going to happen, then something else equally, something else was going to happen that was equally the same. I assumed that was bad, and I didn't know what was going to happen.
Why didn't you think it meant that he would kick you out of the house?
Because I knew there was no way he was going to let me leave the house with me knowing all these things about him. I didn't think that for a second.
You didn't think he'd just throw you out on the street when you had the secret?
Of course not.
Objection, leading motion.
Objection sustained. The answer is stricken.
What was it that made you think he wouldn't kick you out of the house?
Again, is this his thought in May of '89?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, let's phrase it in that fashion.
Okay, in May of 1989, why was it that you did not think your father would just kick you out of the house?
Because my father wasn't just going to let me leave with this information. He was never going to just kick me out of the house. That was not a possibility. And so obviously I knew that.
So did you have any idea what disown meant?
No, and that's what I was worried about.
But it worried you?
Yes.
Now, after your parents died, did you receive information that you had not, in fact, been disinherited?
Yes.
And who did you receive that information from?
My Aunt Martha.
And do you recall how it came about that you received information from your Aunt Martha?
She was talking to Lyle and I at one of the hotels and telling us what the financial things were of the estate.
What the assets were?
Yes.
And do you recall, when you heard her, do you recall saying something to her?
Well, I told her that
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
I told her that we weren't in the will, so it didn't matter in terms of relating to us, because she was saying how we were going to be set up to go to college and be able to live. And I said, Martha, you know, you may have to talk to my grandmother, whoever was going to inherit, because I told her what happened between my dad and I.
Let me back up, okay? What is she trying to tell you?
That we're going to inherit this.
You're going to inherit what?
The money.
Okay, she's trying to tell you how much?
Yes.
She's trying to tell you what
Counsel, again, let's not lead. You can ask him what
She was
said.
she was telling me that there were certain life insurance policies, that how much this house was worth and this house was worth and how much my dad owed here. She was telling me all kinds of things that I wasn't completely understanding, but I was just telling her there's no reason for me to
There's no reason for you to what?
completely understand it when she was trying to explain what I didn't understand, because it didn't really matter to me anyway. I mean, I was interested in it, but it wasn't going to come to me, so
Is that what you were telling her, that it
Yes.
wasn't going to come to you?
yes.
Okay. And did you explain to her why it wasn't going to come to you?
Yes, I told her what my father had told me,
And that was what?
that we were out of the will.
And in that same discussion with your Aunt Martha, was there also a discussion about insurance?
Yes.
And can you recall what the discussion about insurance was?
She was telling us about different insurance policies that my father had. One of them in particular I remember because I had heard about it before.
Okay. What was that?
That was this company insurance. It was a $5 million insurance.
And is that a policy that your father had?
No, he did not have that.
And how did you know that?
Because my mom and him used to talk about the fact that he needed to take this exam to get it, and that he was going to soon.
Going too soon as of when?
He was going to in September, I believed.
Had you heard that at home, that he was going to take an exam?
Yes, he was trying to get Mom off his back. He said, I'm planning on taking it in September, just because Mom and him were discussing it often.
So what was your state of mind with respect to the $5 million policy? Did he have it or did he not have it?
He didn't have it.
And was there any doubt in your mind about that?
No, I knew he didn't have it. He was going to get it the next month.
And did your Aunt Martha nevertheless bring this up as a possible asset?
I don't know if she completely understood that he didn't have it, or I'm not sure what was in her mind, but I was telling her what was in my mind, and she wasn't someone that... She was stubborn in that respect, saying, no, this is the situation. I was saying, no, it wasn't, and finally I just gave up.
You were trying to tell her it didn't exist.
Yes.
Did she talk to you about another insurance policy?
Yes.
And was that something you knew about before?
No.
And what was your reaction when she told you there was another insurance policy?
I said, great, but I was trying to tell her that it wasn't going to us, so he can have $6 million insurance policies, and it didn't matter.
Was she telling you it was a $6 million insurance policy?
No.
What was she telling you?
It was a $600,000 policy, I believe.
And you were telling her that you wouldn't be getting that?
Yeah, she was saying that we were going to get it within 10 days or in a short amount of period, and I was telling her, I don't think that's going to happen, and she was saying, it is going to happen, and I was saying, fine, I hope it does happen, but I don't think so.
And why did you think you wouldn't be getting the insurance?
Because we weren't in the will, so we weren't going to be getting the money.
Did you think that insurance came through a will?
Yes.
Now, in the course of this conversation, was your brother expressing similar sentiments as yours?
Yes, he was more exasperated because he was more concerned with other things, and he didn't believe what Aunt Martha was telling him, so he was less concerned.
My point is, was he saying the same things?
Yes.
That you guys were disinherited, that he knew there was no $5 million policy, the same things you were saying?
Objection sustained. All right, you may continue.
Mr. Menendez, at some point in September, did you receive some of the money from that second insurance policy that your Aunt Martha told you about?
Yes.
And did you, after that, seek advice from various adults concerning what to do?
Huh?
Could you just tell us who the people were that you sought advice from?
Aunt Martha, mostly my cousin Henry. There was a probate attorney named Steve. I talked to him a lot. I just wanted to know really what to do with all this money and what to do with my life.
And were you seeking advice from people concerning what to do with your life in addition to what to do with the money?
Objection leading.
Sustained.
You said you wanted to know what to do with the money and what to do with your life. What do you mean when you say what to do with your life?
Well, after I wasn't able to get into Princeton, I didn't quite know what to do. So I talked to different people about what I should do, and where I was and what was going on.
And what did you decide to do?
I eventually decided to hire Mark as a permanent coach.
And to do what with your time?
To play tennis.
To play tennis for recreation or for something else?
I never played for recreation. To play tennis full time, so to play tennis full time.
As a career?
I didn't know if it was going to be a career. I didn't know what was going to happen, so I just made it for a year and see what happened the next fall, whether I was going to go to college or continue in tennis. I really wasn't sure.
Were you having any difficulty in making decisions?
Yes.
Now, at some point, were you with your cousin Henry in October of 1989 when Dr. Oziel's name came up?
Yes.
And how did Dr. Oziel's name come up in that conversation?
Well, I had been seeing Henry a lot and talking to him about how depressed I was and how I thought about killing myself and different dreams that I had. And he said that, he would talk to me and just sit and try to comfort me, but he said you really need to see Dr. Oziel. He said that he had called Dr. Oziel, in fact, and because of these conversations, and that he wanted me to go see him.
Who had called Dr. Oziel because of these conversations?
Henry.
Now, had Dr. Oziel been around the family, at the hotel and at the memorial service?
Yes.
And had your cousin Henry, excuse me, come in contact with him then?
I assume so. I don't specifically remember. I mean, all of my relatives, I think, did. I'm not sure.
And during the time that Dr. Oziel was around you at the hotels and the memorial service, did he have any conversations with you concerning financial matters?
Yes.
And what did he say to you concerning financial matters?
Just that he had this own attorney that he thought we should hire for probate, since there was a young attorney coming on to do the estate, and he said that wasn't a good idea and that we should hire his attorney, and that he had a lot of good ideas of what to do when the money came in.
And did he tell you what those good ideas of his were?
Not specifically. He just said that he had a lot of different companies and a lot of different things and a lot of great ideas, and that...
And he brought that up with you when you were at the hotel?
Yeah.
And were there discussions at the hotel about the estates? The fact that there was a will that would be probated and that there were estates?
I mean,
Yes.
it changed. At first, I didn't think I was in the will, and so I told him, you know, it's not going to us. But after I found out that apparently I was going to, he started talking to me a lot more and just giving me different advice. He was telling me what I should invest it in, and that he had these ideas that maybe would work out really well, and that I should call him.
Mr. Menendez, my question, though, was at the hotels, apart from Dr. Oziel, were there discussions among the family members about the estates? That's my question.
Oh, yes.
And were there such discussions also when Dr. Oziel was around?
Yes.
Now, when your cousin Henry told you that you should see Dr. Oziel, did you take that suggestion?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I called up his secretary to get an appointment for the next day.
And did you talk to Dr. Oziel before you saw him, or only to his secretary?
I didn't talk to Dr. Oziel before I saw him.
You only talked to the secretary?
Yes.
Now, what was your reason for going to see Dr. Oziel in October of 1989?
Because I was afraid I was going to kill myself.
And that was based on how you were feeling?
It was based on how I was feeling, yeah, obviously, and the dreams that I was having, and just what I was thinking and so on.
Were these different dreams than the one you've told us about before?
Yes.
And without telling us what the dream was, what was the type of dream?
Just the fact that I killed myself in the dream and how good it felt.
And what?
And how peaceful and good it felt afterwards.
So you were dreaming about suicide?
Yes.
And were you thinking about suicide when you were awake?
Yes.
And were you having any difficulty in dealing with your family?
Yes, I was having a lot of difficulty.
What was that difficulty?
Difficulty was in being around them. Them not knowing and me not being able to tell them, and it just was very hard for me.
Okay. So, do you recall, therefore, going to Dr. Oziel's office on October 31st?
Yes.
And do you recall what it was? Well, first of all, do you remember every detail of the conversations you had with him on October 31st?
No, definitely not.
Do you remember every detail of the conversation that you had with him on November 2nd?
No.
Did you take any notes during those sessions?
No.
Did you have any reason to believe on October 31st, when you were with Dr. Oziel, that it would ever matter what was said in those sessions?
No, not really, no.
Now, do you recall what the first topic was, generally, of your talk with Dr. Oziel on the 31st?
Yes.
And what was it?
It was about why I went to see him, and basically how lost I felt, the weight I had lost, and what I was planning on doing now. And I'd asked him if that was a good idea, to be playing tennis and not going to school. And I told him about how I was feeling, and just about those things.
Well, why were you asking him if it was a good idea, if you should be playing tennis, if you had already decided to play tennis?
I had decided to play tennis, but I didn't know what was a good idea and what was not at that point, and I didn't know if I'd be able to continue playing tennis. I just needed to do something with my life, because for 2 months I was doing nothing, and it was hard for me. And so I was just talking to him about that.